You're listening to Surely a Mystery, straight from Long Beach Island, New Jersey. We're here to share with you all the spooky, scary, and mind-bending enigmas that make up the Jersey Shore. I'm your living host, Anna, here with some mystery, history, and a few tips to proper ghost hunting. So why don't we get started?
On this episode of Surely a Mystery, I came across a topic because a work colleague made reference to the Hillbillies of New Jersey. I had no idea what he was talking about. I have been working in North Jersey recently, and many were like, "You've never heard of the Jackson Whites?" It was always quickly followed up by, "Well, don't ever use those words. It's considered derogatory and racist." I was like, okay, but why? So I started to talk to people and do research. History and controversy seem to always go hand in hand. Just look at the news today. Election fraud, fake news, strippers and presidents. But this kind of controversy has to do with illegal dumping, interracial mingling, and of course, potential mafia murders and social justice. Let's talk first about the history and the DNA. DNA doesn't really have a paper trail. I mean, seriously, how many people did 23andMe found out that dad wasn't dad, or that they had 50 relatives with a last name that they'd never heard of? Case in point, I have like 25 Weatherby relatives, and I have no direct relationships that I know of that have the last name of Weatherby. There are many groups like Jones Sweet and Smith Edwards that are related to that area, but those two DNA groups aren't related to each other directly. But Charles Gray Smith and James Edwards did fight during the Revolutionary War as loyalists, but it still makes no sense. There's no intermarriage. They lived and intermingled with the Indians, the Rampo Mountain Indians, who lived in Bergen County and in Rockland County areas. But their last names tend to be more Dutch surnames in the past. Why? Well, that's because they came from Dutch slave owners, or the Dutch who settled New Amsterdam, which we now call New York City, and went west to mingle with the natives. But the true DNA of that area are a triple mix: black, white, and American Indian. The native ancestry tends to be smaller tribes like Algonquin or Munsee or Lenape. This leads to some modern problems. They can't officially get recognized no matter how many times they petition because they're mixed race. But culturally, they are their own society and their own tribe. Let's talk about facts of the matter. There is a strong sense of community in that area, as well as a distrust of outsiders with all Jackson Whites. Partially because they live in a remote location and have a lower socioeconomic status, so not much of getting out. Many have health problems, which were caused by big industry, so that makes them even more likely to hate whites. These mountain people have been treated poorly by such companies like the Ford Company, who illegally dumped paint and toxic chemicals in the local area for years. It eventually became a Superfund cleanup site, and although it was supposed to be cleaned up, Ford and the EPA have come back multiple times with new cleanups and have been very recently doing it. So many horrible health issues have happened because these chemicals were in the food and water supply. So, because they distrusted the outside, many of these people did not seek health or other benefits, and nowhere to even go. Let's add the recent sinkholes, which are appearing and homes are being condemned. So now they got no place to live. But what put them even more in the spotlight is the violence of the area and the fatal shooting of a local resident by a park official screamed to many like a case of police brutality. I became more interested in all the missing persons cases and unsolved mysteries which have happened there. These mountain people are just as tight-lipped as those in a gang neighborhood, like I saw in LA. They are afraid to rat out a neighbor, or they might even think that their own vigilante justice is better than going through the court system, and of course, less costly. Movies about the area, like Out of the Furnace, were called racist, which had a star-studded cast, but had numerous references to the Rampanois as, well, just feeble-minded. Many in the community referred to this as a hate crime, or even a hatchet job. It increased the stigmatization and marginalization of the area, according to many tribal leaders and members of the local area. If people buy into the characterization of them as inbred, buck-toothed, dumb mountain men, kind of like really bad rednecks, then how does that explain the two lines of DNA from the same area that don't cross or haven't genetically crossed for over 5 generations? So where is the inbreeding? Before we get into the weirdness and the mysteries, let's just say that Jackson White is a slur term and is like calling a black person the N-word. It always is stereotyping a group as mountain men or black hillbillies. Some people even talk about the group like cowboys or even throw back loyalists to their own ideas of what the land is. This is certainly not the case. What I seem to be more interested in is what happened to William Matt George or Mr. Dennison, or how about John Gus DeFreeze, or why certain areas of the forest are off limits and not because of what you think. We will cover all of that and a lot more when we get back after a short sponsor break from a local Latin restaurant, Mexican fare straight from, made by real Mexican chefs and located in the local area in Manahawkin. Especially with all the gas prices and everything, I would like to thank our anonymous donor for allowing me to be able to continue doing this podcast, especially this episode. The New Jersey Maritime Museum is located at 528 Dock Road in Beach Haven. It's set in an old sort of Victorian beach house. And I wanted you to know sort of the history of it. So in a 1983 episode of a television program called Prime Time, Jim O'Brien did a segment on New Jersey wreck diving, interviewing Bob Yates and Deb Whitcraft. During that interview, Deb spoke of her quest for knowledge about different wrecks and New Jersey maritime disasters. She also stated that she had started collecting all this information and other items pertaining to New Jersey maritime history, and she'd hoped that one day she would have a place to display her collection. On July 3rd, 2007, Deb's lifelong ambition came to fruition when the Museum of New Jersey Maritime History opened its doors. In the years between the program and the museum opening, Deb actively pursued her quest, working with other New Jersey maritime historians and amassing a sizable collection of shipwreck files and artifacts. This collection comprised almost all of the museum's material when it opened.
In the years since it opened, the museum has grown at an amazing rate thanks to donations and loans from the diving community and the public in general. Although the museum was built entirely with public funds, it is now a registered non-profit entity and deed restricted to remain so. It operates entirely on donations and is staffed by a small group of dedicated volunteers. Luckily, it's open all year round. It has events, special talks, special visitors, kids things. It's got a little bit of everything. Their phone number is 609 492 0202. They have a website, and the website even has a shipwreck list of all the hundreds and thousands of boats along the New Jersey coast that have shipwrecked. And if you go in, there are tons of books with all the documents, and that's how I found some of what I needed to do this particular podcast. So I would definitely take a stop by either their website or in person because they have some fantastic information and artifacts. So again, support the New Jersey Maritime Museum here on Long Beach Island. Thanks to our local sponsor, La Cabanita in Manahawkin, New Jersey. It's right near the bowling alley on Bay Ave. We could always use more financial support. Remember, it is tax deductible for personal or business. Think of it like a donation to your local library or historical researcher. I don't use it for anything other than keeping this going and gas to visit the areas that I write about. Why don't we start with death by beer bottle? Now that certainly sounds redneck. Stabbed through the right side of the neck by a broken beer bottle. Yep, that's just how a father of 6 was killed in Mahwah, New Jersey. John Gus DeFries. With a name like that, you can't get more Rampo or Jackson White. A poor woman walking to work around 7:45 found him slumped over on Brant Road behind the wheel of his 1976 Honda Civic. Can you even imagine? You're thinking that maybe this guy might kidnap you or assault you, and then you look a little bit more closely and they're dead as a doornail. So, according to the medical examiner, he died several hours before he was found. So, sometime in the middle of the night. Okay, I'm wondering what the bleep he is doing out in the middle of nowhere at that time of the night. Now, don't go to the usual areas of thinking, like immediately to having an affair. Because the night before, he was at the Mahwah Brother Fellowship Church. He had a family that lived in the area of Hillburn, as well as friends from work. But he and his immediate family had moved to Haverstraw about a few months before the incident. So seeing him driving around the Hillburn area after church certainly wouldn't be a stretch. Stag Hill was even used as a shortcut for him to get home, so still nothing weird. But, you ready for this? He was stabbed in the right side of the neck, so his killer was sitting in the passenger's seat. He also had been drinking, according to the coroner, but there was no sign of struggle. DNA was collected and has been retested against the national database, but of course, if you don't commit a felony, you don't get in the system. Okay, so those of you who are thinking like something went wrong, you could be right because his pants were partially down. So was it that he had just finished sex, about to have sex, or the killer pulled them down to throw off investigators? My money is unfortunately going to the way of a female offender, or maybe a youthful offender too.
There are pictures of him, and I don't want to throw anything against him, but the offender could be a gay male or someone that he thought was gay. His case is one of 5 being currently reviewed seriously, though probably it won't get solved unless someone admits to being gay or having an affair with him. Maybe it might be because the locals think it's justice. A man with 6 kids who should have gone straight home, but he didn't. Everyone flipped out when the woman got hit by a boat in Florida, or California cyclists who got hit on PCH. But when William, Matt, George got hit, he was left to die on Route 202, and nobody seemed to care. There were pieces of fender, grill, muffler, all over the place at Sky Meadow and Old Haverstraw roads. He was riding his bike to Suffern so that he could get a ride from a friend into New York City to visit another friend. But someone smacked right into him with enough force to tear off all those parts of their car. What's worse? Authorities think that the poor 53-year-old man was either resting against the guardrail or that he was literally pushing the bike up the incline near the guardrail. The pictures show that there was enough room on the side of the road for a car to easily pass him, as well as you could see him from a distance. They think that the vehicle was a blue, older model Chevy Tahoe, or Silverado, or Chevy pickup. So they got the list. They hit the auto body shops, and they even checked out those who'd registered vehicles of the same makes and inspected those cars. They even decided to go across state lines. That was in 2015. The reward is now up to $2,500. I kind of have a feeling like they hit him on purpose. Could it have been like those kids in Vegas, you know, the ones who were joyriding and kept smacking into people? Or was it a person on the lam? You know, someone who didn't want to get caught? Was it a kid who took a car and decided to go joyriding and really didn't know how to steer past someone? I'm thinking that it might be like the other case I just talked about, and it probably will never get solved. It might either be someone passing through, or someone who lives way deep in the woods and just really torched the car. But several people say that they see walking on the side of the road, or a bike leaned up against the rail with no rider. So his ghost is still hanging around, and probably will for a while. How about a missing man who was found off the trail near the reservation? The only thing is it's 40 minutes off the trail in Mawa. Hector Zamorino was found, and no indication of foul play. He was caught on security cameras walking toward the reservation, and there was no sign that he was upset. But he didn't have his phone, and he didn't tell his wife where he was going. According to her, he would often go out on walks. So, how did he die? And how did he get so far off the literal beaten path? Stop thinking that it's suicide. Well, it could be, but it could also be a heart attack. But nothing was found. He was just dead. They say the wisps of a man are often caught on the Continental Soldiers Park cameras. They were the ones that caught him walking that night before he died. But they say it's like a wisp of a figure that's not really there. Now, the last one. Vandalism is pretty common when we talk about activists. Harold Malt, an elder of the Mohawk people, was arrested, and he definitely did it. Maybe he was against the polo company. That stuff happens more around there than you ever think, and rightly so. But how about a real-life, wild-haired young boy living on his own in the Rampo Mountain State Forest? That's right, Mowgli of New Jersey. Yes, I did say that. A 6-year-old boy who lived there on his own for an extended period of time and no idea of who he is. He understands English. And park rangers found him in tattered clothes and even a makeshift campsite. So he was born in the local area and thrown out to the woods. Believe it or not, he's not the first child. Instead of killing an unwanted child, people just let them out to the woods. Since abortion is against God's law, killing is against the commandments, but leaving a child out to God's will in the forest is great. Let God figure it out. Children are often seen running in the forest. Some are considered phantom children, ghosts of the past, but some of them are actually modern missing children who fled their current circumstances or were left out to fend for themselves. Why don't we talk about the most important activists to have been murdered in the local area? Who killed Two Clouds? He was found dead on the shores of the Rampo River, about half in the water and half out. Now, you need to understand, he was an excellent swimmer. So how did he drown? There was no investigation that happened. No one looked into the strange aspects of the case. They simply assumed it was another drunk Muslim Indian who fell into the river and just drowned. But he was strong, healthy, and a devout Muslim. So there was no drinking on his part. He took care of himself, and he tried to take care of his tribe. He was the war chief for the tribe. But recently, he had a local history professor fired over the professor's viewpoints. But many think that it wasn't the history professor, that it was actually a tribal inside job. There is a young man who's part of the tribe who was not remorseful at all about Two Clouds' death, nor very empathetic. He was more interested in being the new war chief. According to many, this young man was neither qualified for the position, but he just didn't deserve it. So could he and his friends kidnap Two Clouds and kill him because of simple human jealousy? The case is still unsolved. Probably the white or American police think it's an Indian problem. Usually they leave it to the tribal police, but remember, this tribe isn't officially recognized, so no tribal police. So they figure it's all on them. It's a them problem. That's the problem with this area. They want to be left alone and be separate, so the outside authorities agree with them. They let them be. As long as they don't harm outsiders or go off the res or out of the mountains, they leave them alone to their own justice. It's like they're in their own world with a set boundary that's been there for hundreds of years, based partially on race and socioeconomic background. Well, let's talk about episode number 11. That's going to be our next episode on Surely a Mystery. It's going to be Old Tuckerton. We have Nazis, Germans, weird stone mounds, and giants in that episode. Of course, we have a few ghosts too, and as you can hear, summertime's almost upon us with neighbors, barking dogs, and people having a beer bong party next door. So once again, this is your living host, Anna, putting this together from my little office on Long Beach Island, New Jersey. Hoping you are safe, not getting burned by friends or the sun when it's not raining. So I'll see you the next time on Surely a Mystery.